Welcome to The Real Pro-Choice, where you will hear stories of miraculous healings and restorations. You're in a crisis situation and you desperately need an answer. You cry out to God and He sends you the answer. Find out how my guest today overlooked the answer, not just once, but 3 times. Next.
The choices we make affect our lives. Sometimes our choices not only affect our own lives, but everyone connected to us. Maybe even those we're not aware of. God says, choose life, so that you and your descendants may live. Join Donna Grisham and her guests as they share the choices they've made and how Jesus has set them free. Next on The Real Pro-Choice.
Welcome. I'm here on set with Kellie Brooks. Kellie is a mom and a grandmother, and she has been in the pro-life industry for 6 years. Welcome, Kellie.
Hello.
Kellie, you attended your 10-year class reunion, and after attending your 10-year class reunion, you found out you were pregnant. Mm-hmm. Share with us how a pastor's daughter handles that kind of news.
This pastor's daughter was terrified. I had just been through a 3-year court battle with my oldest 2 daughters, and I had pretty much secluded myself. I didn't date, I didn't go out. And I went to my class reunion and I ran into an old friend from 10th grade. And when that happened, things went forward too fast, too quickly, and I found out at 29 years old that I was pregnant. And I was terrified. I was a pastor's daughter. I felt like I had already put my girls through enough trauma. I felt like I had put my church through enough trauma, and I had put my parents through enough trauma. And I was scared to tell them. I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. I didn't want my dad to lose his church. I didn't know anything else to do, so I prayed and I asked God. I said, I don't know any other choice but abortion, and I had never believed in abortion. And I saw God come through in a miraculous way for me. I told him, I said, if you want to save this baby, you're going to have to do it, because I can't tell my parents. I can't put them through that pain.
Okay. Well, after you found out you were pregnant, you called an abortion clinic, and some miraculous things happened. So tell us about that.
After I called the abortion clinic, there was a waiting period. And during that time, I found a cassette tape. And on that cassette tape, there was nothing written. And I popped it in the cassette player and listened to it. And my grandfather, who had passed away when I was 17, who was also a pastor, was on the tape, and he began to cry and pray for a mother that didn't know what to do. And then the cassette tape cut off. I walked in the kitchen, and my girls were painting sundials at the kitchen table. One stuck to the table, and it said, God gives life. And I took a knife and I beat the sundial to try to get it off the table, and it stayed. And it stayed until after God had worked my miracle.
Okay, stop right there. I have to go back to that. Your daughters were painting a sundial, and you see a sundial that says, God saves lives.
Right.
And you commenced to beating it.
Right.
What, I mean, what happened? I mean, why was you beating that sundial? I mean, what was your emotions? What were you going through at that moment when you were?
Well, my emotions were like a roller coaster. And after just hearing a cassette tape of my grandfather crying and praying for a mom who didn't know what to do, and then I see that sundial laying there that said, God gives life, I just wanted it to go away, because I was still in that dark realm of not knowing what to do and what decision to make.
Yeah. So you're in that place, and you're desperate. You're desperate. You just want to, and I'm going to use this, and a lot of people might not like this, but you're in that place of, you're like, I just got to get rid of the problem, right. Which we know the baby wasn't the problem.
Right.
Okay. So, but you're in that place. I'm going to get rid of the problem. What happened after that?
Well, there was extreme conviction. I had gone to church every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, all of my life. And I had quit going to church out of conviction. So the Sunday night before I was to go to the abortion clinic on Tuesday, I went to church. We had a visiting pastor and his wife, and she called me to the front, and she began to cry and pray with me. And she said that the Lord was allowing her to feel a pain inside of me that she didn't understand. So she prayed for about 20 minutes. And still, even at this point, I didn't tell her what was going on. I didn't share it with my parents. I still kept this all inside of me. And it was tormenting me, but I wanted to tell her. And I would cling to her, and I was wanting to tell her so bad, but I walked out of there, and I ended up calling the next day to confirm my appointment again, just to make sure that...
So you had already called one time?
Yes.
And you made an appointment. And then after that Sunday night, after the pastor's wife, I think, prayed for you.
Right.
And still, I mean, 3 times. 3 times. It's like God's trying to intervene in your life.
Right.
But because we get so caught up in our problem and what's going on. And like I said, the problem wasn't the baby, it wasn't the pregnancy, it was the fact that the turmoil that you were going through. And we're trying to get an answer. You want an answer. But God's saying, you know, the cassette tape, your grandfather praying for a girl that needs an answer, a woman that needs an answer. Then your daughter's painting sundials.
Right.
God saves lives.
Right.
I mean, then he has the pastor's wife pray for you.
Right.
After all that, God began to intervene. We won't go into that full story of that, but I want you to begin that story and tell about how God began to intervene in your life. And it was at the abortion clinic. At the abortion clinic, he began to intervene.
He did. He began to intervene, and at that same time, I had previously heard a song called Let Me Live, where babies were singing from the womb. And that song began to replay in my mind, and I could hear every word of that song. I couldn't tell you today one sentence of it.
Yeah, that's Pat Boone's song. It's funny because I just listened to that song just the other day.
It sure is.
Yeah, so you heard that song, and you're trying to block it all out of your mind. You just want to get through this. You want it over. You want this nightmare over.
Right.
And what happened?
That's when I made an appointment at the abortion clinic and talked to a very nice lady.
Okay.
And the lady told me, she gave me directions to a clinic on the back streets of Atlanta. I can't even tell you the name of it. I don't know. I just know that she told me how to get there.
Okay. And you go to the clinic?
Well, after the pastor's wife, the very next day, I called to confirm. And when I called to confirm that appointment, the same nice lady, I talked to her again. Once again, she confirmed exactly how to get there. I could have never found that clinic without those directions.
Kellie, there's so much more to your story. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
God values all life, even from conception. Donna Grisham and the vision of her ministry, Journeys of Choice, is to empower women through counseling, parenting classes, and by providing alternate options to choose life for themselves and their unborn child. With prayer and dependence on God, Journeys of Choice is committed to saving the lives of unborn children, while at the same time offering courage, assistance, and healing. For more information, visit journeysofchoice.org.
Welcome back. I'm here with Kellie Brooks. Kellie, in the last segment, you had just found out you were pregnant. God was trying to intervene. He had done some really crazy things and to try to get your attention. What happened that really got your attention?
Well, after the second confirmation on how to get to the abortion clinic on the back streets of Atlanta, it was a Tuesday morning, and I remember driving to Atlanta. I remember stopping in the parking lot and looking at the dumpster, wondering if that's where my baby was going to go. And I remember looking at the sidewalk and how long it looked. And it was a beautiful day outside, but my world was dark. And I remember thinking, if somebody was here to stop me, I wouldn't do this. And I walked into the clinic, and I remember how dark it was. I remember there was a heaviness. And I remember sitting in the chair watching mothers go to the back. And they would go back, but they never came out. And I couldn't take it anymore. And I just went up to the counter and I said, can I please hurry? I've got to get out of here. Can we please get this over with? And she said, you don't have an appointment. And I said, I've called twice. I've confirmed the appointment with a very sweet lady. And I said, I would have never known how to get to this clinic without someone telling me. Back then, you didn't have GPSs.
Right.
So I had to have the directions. And she said, we don't have anybody like that here, talking about the sweet lady. And she said, plus you have gum in your mouth, and that could be fatal to your health. And when she told me that, I walked out the door, and instantly I hit my knees.
Wait a minute. Okay. You have gum in your mouth. It could be fatal to your health.
Right.
Why didn't she say, you need to spit your gum out?
Right.
Because if you spit your gum out, it's not going to be fatal to your health.
Right.
So that's, to me, here we go. Actually, it wasn't just 3 times. Here goes got another intervention that God's trying to reach Kellie. You know what's so neat is, you know, some people would say, oh, God wouldn't do that. God wouldn't try to, you know, they say, we think about just the baby. You know, we're always, in pro-life, they're always saying, or pro-choice people are always saying, oh, you're only thinking about the baby. You're only thinking about the baby. This right here tells us that God not only is thinking about the baby, He is thinking about Kellie, the woman, carrying this baby.
Right.
So what happened next?
Well, as soon as I walked out the door, I hit my knees, and I thanked God that He had saved my baby. And I knew right then that I was going to keep the baby no matter what.
Okay, you decide, you finally, God breaks through.
Right.
He breaks through, and you choose life.
Right.
Did things get easier?
At first, I thought they would. I had people that would they were bringing me diapers, they were bringing me baby food, bringing me formula. I never bought one diaper, not one jar of baby food. I never bought any formula. It was just all given to me, and it was not things I asked for. God just sent them. But I did choose to get married. That was not the wisest decision for me to do. When you go into a relationship and you have anger and bitterness, which I was dealing with, and lots of jealousy, I brought that into a marriage and combined it with, there was drug addiction and alcohol combinations that were involved in our marriage. And when you're mixing emotional battles and you're mixing alcohol and substance abuse, that turns into violence. And it can either be physical violence, it can be verbal violence, and there was both in our marriage. And I remember trying to stay for our children because we had the yours, mine, and ours gang. There was 5 children involved. And I had bought the house that my parents, I had lived in that house since I was 15, and I had bought it from my parents. They had given me $43,000 equity in that house. And I didn't want to leave. I didn't know what to do. So here again, I'm praying, God, deliver me from this situation.
And during the time your marriage, I believe your husband was abusive during that time, and you had to, you and your children had to run from him at times.
Well, there was lots of abuse that I had already been through from a previous marriage. And it was during that time that me and my children were running to protect them. But at this point in my marriage, we were struggling to keep it together. We would go to church. He was even called to preach during this time, and things had cleared up for us. And then he was a real estate agent, so at Christmas he had lost 3 deals right at Christmas, and this caused him to relapse back into some of those problems. So the abuse was getting stronger.
Okay. We're gonna fast forward, and we're gonna go to a place you'd already chosen life. You're going through a terrible marriage, but you're in the pro-life industry and you're helping do some things. And you got a call from somebody, and they invited you to the Georgia State Capitol during the time that the heartbeat bill was being voted on. Something miraculous happened. Share with us what that was.
Okay, I had received the call to be at the Capitol the next day dressed in white to stand for life. I ordered a pen that had my daughter's picture that said "My Miracle." When I went to pick the pen up, it was a poster, and it was beautiful, but I said I don't want to look like a protester when I get there, but I went to the Capitol with my poster. They let me in but would not allow me to take it into the Senate room. But while I was sitting in that Senate room, there was a senator sitting down below me, and I had his number in my phone because I had planned an elected officials tour for the pro-life organization that I work for. So I received a text that said that he was about to change his mind and vote against life. And I was looking at him as I was texting, saying, if you choose life today, God's going to bless you. So I was looking at the screen when they placed their votes, and he voted for life. And he came to me later and he said, I went through a lot for making that decision, but it was the biggest blessing that I've ever did.
So, okay, I want to get this straight. You're in the state capitol, and this senator was there at the same time, and y'all are face to face. You're seeing this, and you get that text that he's changing his vote, and if he changed the vote, it's going to be for abortion. He's going to vote pro-abortion, not pro-life.
Right.
And you tell him, right there, you tell him that.
Well, if he voted against life, there was going to be several others that followed suit.
Right.
And from where I was sitting in the Senate room, I could see him down below me. And I was texting him, telling him that God would bless him if he voted for life.
Wow.
And that's when I saw the screen and saw him vote for life.
So that's just a major switch. So what, what you did really changed the course of even, the Roe v. Wade. I mean, the votes of different senators and all. So, okay, Kellie, you've been in the pro-life industry for 6 years. Tell us how, being in the pro-life industry, what you've encountered and what, some things that you've seen over the course of 6 years, how that starting out things were happening one way, but yet you begin to see a shift in things and leading up to the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Well,
I live in a college town. I work in a college town, so we see our largest age group is 20 to 24. And we have seen these girls start turning to the abortion pill. All they have to do is push a button on their computer and they can receive this pill.
Right.
So our challenge now is to reach out to them through social media to bring them into the center so we can share their different options. Let them know that we're going to walk beside them. And just like I was provided with free items for my baby,
right,
we're going to help provide them with the things they need for their children.
Now, do you have a particular story that you could think of in the span of 6 years that really stood out, of a young girl coming to your clinic that really stands out to you that you'd like to share?
I do. We had one that actually came from the college, And her parents were very much against her having her baby. And it just so came, I found out that she was a pastor's daughter. So I was able to share my story with her. And that day she chose life for her baby and gave her heart to Jesus. And over that following year, there were seven other women that came in that were the same story, and they chose life, and their babies were saved.
Okay.
And they gave their hearts to Jesus.
Wow. That's awesome, Kellie. Kellie, we're going to take a break. When we return, we're going to pray for you.
You may be in a situation where you are at a crossroads between the choice of life and the choice of death. Life may have stopped for you, and you are fearful of what your future holds. Abortion, rape, adoption, and more are covered in Donna Grisham's book, Journeys of Choice. As you read these pages, you will see for yourself the truth behind choice and the effects of the choices we make. See how God wants to intervene in your situation and change the course of your life forever. Find hope and healing for those who have been faced with an unplanned pregnancy. Know that God has not left you and wants to bring hope to your hopelessness. Every testimony in this book, Journeys of Choice, will bring healing and hope to the brokenhearted, revealing what was meant for evil and harm, and show you how God can turn it around for good and blessings. This heartfelt book will inspire, motivate, encourage, and assist you on the road to recovery that will bring a wellspring of hope into your life and others.
Welcome back. I'm here with Kellie Brooks. Kellie, in our last segment, you were telling the story. You told a story about being at the Georgia State Capitol and the senator that changed his mind, his vote, actually changed his vote because others were going to follow pursuit. There was something else, though, that happened during that time. Share that with us.
As soon as I walked into the Capitol, there was 2 Catholic women that met me at the door. And I was theirs the rest of the day. They stood me at the end of a hall and they said, hold this poster up, and every senator, as they exit this room, is going to lay their eyes on that poster. So they showed me, at that day, there were pro-abortion women who were there in red capes, and they were portraying the handmaiden. Right. And they showed me one lady that was standing in a handmaiden cape that was at the top of the Capitol stairs. And they said, do you think you can minister to her? And I said, with God, I can do anything. So we prayed, and I made my way down the stairs, and there was no one else on the stairs but her and I. And I stood beside her for 20 minutes, and I had my poster in my hand, and I told her, I said, I remember the time that I thought a baby was a choice. And I said, but this is my daughter, and God saved her in an abortion clinic. And she turned her head up, and she looked at my poster, and then she looked back down. And for 20 minutes, we stood there together, and you could just feel the forces of good and evil battling. And I saw one of our house reps make his way up the stairs with tears streaming down his face. And he hugged me, and he said, you have a purpose here today. Don't give up. And he walked away, and I stood there with her for 20 minutes, and I know that God was moving in that room.
In your story, man, I'm telling you, God really loved you so much. I mean, the love of God was showing so strong in your story. He was trying to get your attention so many times, and yet, as always, as most of us do, we just ignore. We begin ignoring. But Kellie, there's somebody out there watching right now. There's a young lady watching, and she's struggling with the same thing. She's struggling, and God's wanting to get her attention. Kellie, I want you to look into the camera, and I want you to speak to that one young lady. What would you say to her?
If I could say anything to the women out there who are in the same position that I was, I want you to know that God has not forgotten. He does love you, and He will not leave you or forsake you. I remember laying in the floor crying, begging God to use me again, use my life again. And the key was repenting. It was repenting before the Lord and having forgiveness in my heart for people in the past that had hurt me. And I still struggle today, but I know that God still has a plan for my life. And my life didn't stop right there. It continued. I went from bad relationship to bad relationship until the Lord got my attention again. And He said, you've got to learn to love me. And when I began to love the Lord, then God got me to a place where He could restore and He could heal me. And for 8 years now, I have just had a relationship with God. I haven't dated, I haven't gone out, I haven't seen other people because I'm enjoying my relationship with Jesus. He has a plan for my life. He's already showed me that. He's going to restore, and that person will come into my life when the time is right. But now I'm content with Him. I never want another mother to feel like her only choice is to stand in an abortion clinic and let people who are trying to make a living from killing babies discourage you or deceive you. And if I could pray with somebody out there today and help you to find Jesus, that is your key. I want to do that. Dear Jesus, I come to you this morning, God, and I pray, dear Lord, that you touch every listener out there. Yes. God, if there is one that needs you, God, and that they're hanging in the balance just as I was, dear Jesus, I pray that you reach down, God, and you show them that you are mighty. Show them your power, God. I pray that you lift them out of this grave of defeat, God. Let them know that they are loved and they are wanted. God, I pray that they will not focus on the naysayers. They will not focus on the people who are judging them. I pray, dear Lord, that they will focus on you, solely on you. I pray, God, that if there are pastors out there or there are Christians out there that are watching this show, God, that are being judgmental towards these women, I pray, God, that they're going to realize that until they love like you loved, God, that they're not going to be able to reach the souls of those women in their churches. There's 1 in every 4 women have experienced abortion. That is people in their churches, in their families. I pray, dear God, that that mentality is going to die, dear Jesus, and that we are going to be a raised people who come together, God, to save the lives of your gracious creation. God, we just thank you and praise you for being here with us today. In your name we pray. Amen.
You know, as you were praying, Kelly, I got a picture of a young girl, and I see this young girl, and I see her, and she's cutting because she's in such pain, and she's in such turmoil, and she's needing an answer, and she doesn't know how to get the answer, and she's so nervous, and she's trying to the pain of what she's going through, she's trying to mask that pain. So I just want to pray for that young girl. I just pray right now that God, you intervene the same way that you intervened in Kelly's life. God, you intervene in this young girl's life. And if you're the young girl, I ask you to call in and let us know. Thank you for joining us today. Visit my website, journeysofchoice.org. I'd like to hear from you today. See you next week on The Real Pro-Choice.